My name is Peter Biella, and I work at San Francisco State in the Department of Anthropology in a program of visual anthropology founded by my own teacher, John Collier. Well, John Collier Jr., author of Visual Anthropology, Photography as a Research Method, was the son of John Collier Sr. And John Collier Sr. was President Franklin Roosevelt's head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so an important part of John's life was growing up on the Taos Pueblo. And when he was 7 or 8, John was hit by a truck, and he lost the hearing in both ears. And he spent his whole life apparently kind of hearing freight trains in his head. And he, in his older years, he actually had a microphone, and when he talked to you, he would mic you, and so he could hear you, and he had hearing aids in both ears. But he said that growing up in the Taos Pueblo, where until he reached puberty, the Indians treated him as one of their own, and he became bicultural, but dependent on the vision because his hearing was so distorted. And he became affiliated with a lot of anthropologists. One of his most famous works was in Vicos, Peru. And he shot tens of thousands of photographs on different projects in the Canadian Maritimes, and always collaborating with anthropologists, using photographs as kind of Rorschach for research on, he would show the same photograph to people of different class positions or different locations and use their responses as a kind of basis for ethnographic analysis. But by the time I knew him, he was in his 70s, and he was teaching both at San Francisco Art Institute and at San Francisco State. And he had a pretty big class of 20 people maybe. And we would have many assignments. We would bring the material in, photograph a living room, photograph a bedroom, photograph a friend. One of the most remarkable experiences was I did a portrait of a friend for Collier's class, including just some close-up pictures of the guy's face. And Collier was able to tell me things about my friend that it had taken me a decade to learn just by looking. I mean, I was so astonished at his capacity to turn sight into knowledge. And a friend of mine said, "You should meet this Collier guy. I think you'd like him." And so Collier was in anthropology. I'd never heard of him. And I took Collier's class, and it sort of guided me from strict documentary filmmaking, which is what I thought I was going to do, to anthropological. And Collier encouraged me he didn't actively encourage me, but he was in favor of me getting a PhD in anthropology, which is what I ended up doing. Well, as a film undergraduate and graduate student doing documentary films, I had the experience I guess a lot of us have, which is I'll be in the middle of a film and I'll be completely confused and completely incapable of making sense out of what was going on in front of the camera. And I really felt that I needed some theoretical grounding so that I would not be taken by surprise by these developments. I would do documentaries I'd shoot over a period of a year when I was an undergraduate and a graduate student. And in the process, these not just changes, but catastrophes would happen to the people that I was filming. In 3 different projects that happened to me. And I thought naively that anthropology was going to help me figure stuff out in advance. I can't say that it ever did, but it did give me some theoretical background to make a little more sense out of what I was filming. I think what's amazing about this kind of work is that you do never know what's going to happen. Well, there are many purposes for doing anthropology with images. You could talk about it as expository, that you use images to tell a story as if you were writing an article for publication, and people would read your film, and it would be used in classes, and it would be the subject for the teacher's analysis and lecture, part of a lesson, a bigger lesson plan. And I think when I began anthropology filmmaking, that's what I expected to do. I would make films as little texts to be used in the university. Over the years, I had a couple of films on PBS. One of them I think had 20 million viewers, and that was a political intervention about El Salvador, and the US was funding this awful regime in El Salvador, and we made a film against that, and PBS aired it, and the Senate did not pass funding for the money to El Salvador the next time around, so we may have contributed to that a little bit. But in recent years, part of my work with anthropology films has been a kind of applied anthropology in which we make films in order to show them in the communities or nearby communities where we have worked. And we choose social issues that we determine with collaborators from the community. So I work with Tanzania Maasai. And I've worked with 3 or 4 Maasai, college educated, quite a bit. And we determine different topics. So questions like HIV is an obvious one, but migration, alcoholism, spousal abuse, serious problems that the Maasai have. And we make what we call trigger films, 3-minute evocative, non-resolved documentary/narrative pieces. We have a focus group, 20 people maybe. We show it, and then we talk about it. And the idea is with these triggers, that they trigger emotions, and the emotions are about serious social issues, which, like HIV, nobody really wants to talk about. And they promote discussion where if one person is shy, another person may speak for that person, and they develop a sense of a communal problem, whereas something like HIV may be considered to be a personal problem, that if you're ill or someone you care about is ill. But by having a group of people all talking about it together, it becomes clear that it isn't a personal problem, it's a group problem. So the film, because film is so exciting in a way, because people haven't seen it before, brings people in, they're very interested, they talk, and they create a kind of bond, and they make resolutions about, conclusions that, we should do this, and then they decide to do this, and then they do it. So we've shown many of these films quite a bit over the years. We've done half a dozen of them, and they're just little pieces. So there might be a 3-minute piece about Maasai seducing women in Dar es Salaam, which has a 17% HIV rate. And then the men go back to the village, and then all of a sudden it's introduced into the village. Or about migration, or about employment, dangers of employment. The Maasai are, from a Western perspective, they're very promiscuous, but from their perspective, they're very modest about sexuality, and they don't talk about it. And we get them to talk about it. They have all kinds of beliefs. For example, wife sharing is almost mandatory. That's a problem in an environment with HIV rates so high. They believe that condoms are a Swahili trap and that condoms generate HIV. Condoms are responsible for HIV. There's a disease hidden in the plastic. I mean, they've got a lot of very bad ideas. And we use these focus groups to talk about all these things. Somebody will bring them up, someone else will contradict. We have our moderator who tries to keep quiet unless it's essential. And when it's essential, he'll give some kind of, well, the truth is that condoms do not carry HIV. And then he said, but a friend of mine saw a film where there were little things floating around in the condom. It was the HIV. And they said, well, no, that's not the HIV. So amazing discussions happen. And we film the focus groups. So I'm currently working on one where we shot for 2 hours. And to me, it's absolutely fascinating, the kinds of issues they raise. And we prompt them. We show our little prompts, and then they go and they take off. It's just really remarkable.